Hi, Emma. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you, Jeff?
Hey, good, thanks. So we have Emma Dahl on the Data Nerd Herd. So welcome. For people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, for sure. My name's Emma. I work at Snowflake in sales. I am a self-described data person. I landed at Snowflake after I realized that coding maybe wasn't my strong suit. I got out of my econ degree as an undergrad, and I was like, data's the future without really having any idea what that actually meant. Got a master's in analytics after that and realized that for a dyslexic person, spending 6 hours looking for missing commas is like my idea of hell. Briefly worked as a tech senator for Senator Bennett here in Colorado and kind of learned how the sausage got made and realized that I think we need a lot more solutions out there. And when I found Snowflake, it was like, this solves all the problems that I was dealing with. Great. So now I'm on the sales side. And in my free time, if you check out my LinkedIn, you can see that my big thing is trying to make data accessible. So that's kind of what I do and where I am.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that caught my attention was a lot of the posts you've been doing recently with your marker board describing data. I thought you did a really good job going through different bits and pieces of data. I mean, what got you into wanting to make these series of videos and making data more accessible?
Yeah, for sure. So I think for me, when I was learning how to code and learning about IT and analytics and kind of that whole ecosystem in my master's, I realized that there's not really quick explainers for that stuff. Like in my undergrad and high school, when I didn't understand something, I would look up like, macroeconomics for kids, and you could find like a 30-second explainer online, and it would break things down really simply. And unless you get like a degree in computer science, for the most part, a lot of us end up in IT through some like windy, weird path. And so there's not really simple explanations. And I was really craving that as I was going through school. And so when I started working at Snowflake, I realized like I'm finally in a position where maybe I can provide that to other people who, want to understand what machine learning is or what AI is or how BI works without necessarily actually having to write the code. And I felt like there was maybe a little bit of an industry gap there that I'm kind of trying to backfill now. So
Oh yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, there's a giant industry gap, I think. It's I think on one hand, it's you got a lot of companies that I think everyone wants to try and simplify things, but they do it in their own way, maybe.
Mhm.
And so it doesn't, and just leaves like the customer, I guess, like really confused. So, I mean, have you found that when you're out talking to customers as well, um, that you're able to, I guess, explain things better because of the content that you're making, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And for me, it's I mean a question of the chicken or the egg, which came first. But I think in sales and generally speaking, if you can't explain something in a couple sentences, or you can't explain something so that, for example, your grandma understands it, or one of your nieces or nephews understands it, like you probably don't actually understand the topic all that well. So I think for me, it kind of started as like a challenge of like, do I actually understand data governance well enough to break this down in 30 seconds? Like if I have to take a half hour to give a client a pitch as to, why they should pick Snowflake or what we even do, how cloud computing works, like if I don't understand it, how can I expect somebody else to understand it? So I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, these are fair points. So thank you for putting in the effort. I think there's quite a few salespeople in the tech industry that don't make such an effort, and it shows. So
Yeah, it definitely does.
yeah, and it's been kind of I think sort of the joke I think amongst techies is when they talk to salespeople that the salesperson is normally just not conversant in the technology. So I think it's really cool, and I see somebody like yourself who's really going out there, and I think making an effort to not just understand things but try and communicate it better to people. So it's really cool. And what's been the reaction to the stuff you've been making?
It's been really good. Actually, surprisingly positive. I mean, there's always like trolls on LinkedIn that
Well, yeah.
will, pick a fight with anybody. But for the most part, it's been really good. And I think the exciting piece of it is that um, for me, I'm not trying to necessarily take a stance on like whether Snowflake is the best product ever or if BI is better than data science or whatever. It's just kind of putting the content out there and letting people make their own conclusions about it. So I think for that reason, because I'm not putting out like super opinionated stuff, or at least I don't think I am, I haven't gotten a lot of really strong negative reactions. And then I do occasionally get people reaching out that are like, oh, actually, this is really interesting. Like, I'd love to chat more about Snowflake and learn about what you guys do.
Interesting.
And yeah, and I think like for personal brand as well, like so many salespeople kind of get the rep of just like being used car salesmen, you know?
Well, I mean, it's not undeserved either.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
especially, you know, in the tech industry, I would think when there's a lot of commission driven activity and stuff, you know, it's a lot of high pressure, and there's, you know, especially in the data space right now, there's a ton of options. And so, you know, the used car mentality is, I say it's, you know, the old saying goes like, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. And it's I think it's one of those things where the incentive is you have to sell. And so you're going to do that.
Exactly.
But it definitely seems to be like a movement towards, I think, the smart salespeople I know who are out there educating people, you know, and I think taking the extra step. So have you found like types of content that have done better than others? Like, I know you do some data governance stuff, and you do machine learning. I mean, is there anything that stands out?
Yeah, I mean, different stuff resonates with different types of people. And this is definitely still something I'm trying to navigate as I put more stuff out there. And, you know, one of the things I've kind of struggled with is, on the one hand, I think some of my content has kind of taken off because not a lot of other people are doing it. And I've had a hard time like finding a mentor and finding other people to kick around ideas because of that. So I think some things like I did a BI versus data science video a couple months ago about like, what is BI, what is data science, like looking past or looking for the forward, and like what kind of answers you're going to get out of those different types of analytics. And that one took off because every single BI person that I'm friends with shared it. It was like, everybody has to know what I do. So like that one did really well, but I didn't necessarily connect with like anybody that I would call a decision maker. And then I did a video a week or two ago that was if you should be making like data first decisions or business first decisions. And I think it's like a less sexy topic for analysts and for people that are a little bit more tech side. But, you know, kind of to your point of salespeople not necessarily understanding a lot of the tech, I think doing tech sales is kind of this weird junction of like, on the one hand, like I have to understand what a DBA does, and I have to understand what a data scientist does and how the whole ecosystem is connected. And is that going to be the person that actually signs a contract for me? Like you kind of have to have like this, you know, a mile wide and an inch deep mentality. At the end of the day, like you need a VP or a C-suite type person that's going to buy not necessarily an ETL tool or a data warehouse, but like the vision of the data cloud, you know, like a higher level type of like less technical sale, I think. So.
Interesting. We'll have to talk about sales tips in a bit. I mean, I know in my role running a consulting company and I'm selling all the time, whether it's I guess explicit or not. So I guess what are your tips for sales, I suppose, or do you have any? So
yeah, I think I'm really big on social selling, or what I call social selling. You know, most of the work that I do is either directly or indirectly through LinkedIn and videos and connecting with people. And I think for me, especially because we get such a bad rap as salespeople, it's important to establish yourself first as somebody that actually understands what you're talking about and somebody that is advocating for a solution that actually works. And one of the nice things about being at Snowflake is like the product works pretty well. So we're not put in that position of having to push something that we know isn't going to work, because I can pretty much guarantee the product will work, which takes a lot of weight off my shoulders.
Yeah,
I think
helps a bit.
Yeah, like more importantly, it's about being able to talk to people and having people feel like they're heard and understand what their pains are and what their problems are. Obviously, I'm not doing it right now, but as a general rule of thumb, we say you should be talking 20% of the time and listening 80% of the time.
Right. Well, it'd be kind of a boring interview if we were both talking 20% of the time, because that leaves the other 60% for I don't know what. So, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you know, I come from the opposite end where it's more technical background and stuff, and I think figuring out the sales process and all that has been it's been a fascinating journey. I think when you run a company, especially, you don't really have an option not to sell. So you know, but it's something I really like now. Actually, I like it more than the tech side of stuff, and you know, the branding and the marketing stuff. I think is a lot more. Actually, it's a lot more fun. So you burned out or something. Who knows? But yeah, it's interesting too. I think the point about establishing a, you know, kind of a brand as well, I think is interesting. I mean, is that was that what you set out to do, or is that just sort of a consequence of what you've been doing recently on kind of your social selling and your content? Oh, sorry.
I think. Oh, sorry. A little bit of lag there. I think it's been mostly a consequence of what I've been putting out there. I think, like at a more meta level, I think if you're doing something that you believe in that you think actually really matters, and you're trying to be positive and you're staying on top of changes that are happening in a field, you're going to be able to build out a good brand for yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think, sometimes it's more important, like the steps you're taking as opposed to the goal that you have. Like, I didn't set out to have 100,000 views on my videos. Like, that wasn't my goal, but by creating content that I thought was actually valuable, like that I wished was out there when I needed it, turns out other people think that's pretty valuable too. So. Dang,
that's really cool. It's really impressive too. Especially on LinkedIn. I think the video count's been notoriously fickle for a lot of reasons, because the algorithm, at least as far as we can perceive, is it's very short attention span on videos. You either get like a lot of traction at the beginning or like nothing, it seems. And so.
Yeah, no, I've tried to keep everything under 2 minutes, and I've noticed if I go over a minute, like people stop watching. So mm-hmm. You got to be real quick.
I mean, how do you walk me through that? I mean, how do you work on a piece of content that's 2 minutes long when you're trying to consolidate a concept that's, potentially hours worth of material?
Normally, I call a friend that has no idea what I do, and I try to explain it to them until I get to a point where they actually understand what I'm saying. So a lot of my friends, like from my undergrad or, from outside of work, they have no idea what the cloud is. So, for example, I'm going to video this week on what is the cloud. And for me, I really like to do like real life versions of what this is. So the cloud, kind of hard to explain because the cloud doesn't really exist. It's somebody else's computer. But what we're doing with the cloud is we're basically renting somebody else's space, which means that it's a lot more flexible. So now I have this idea of like renting space and it being flexible. And what are some other examples of that? Like Uber, for example, right? Uber is scalable. Like Uber actually really own any cars, but because of that, they can scale up and down. And Snowflake does the same thing. Like, we don't necessarily own a bunch of computers ourselves, but we can rent out that storage space from Amazon or AWS. And because it's flexible, there's a lot of value in that. And that's kind of where I like to start, is like, what's an actual real world example that people see every single day? And then how can I tie that into IT and tech? Because sometimes that stuff is not very accessible.
That's interesting. How long does it usually take you to make a video then?
I'd say a 1 to 2 minute video will probably take me a couple hours.
That's crazy.
I saw another YouTuber talking the other day. He's like, yeah, I'd say a 5 minute video probably takes me 15 hours. And I was like, that sounds about right.
Dang. Are you on YouTube as well?
I just started my YouTube channel today after people started hounding me for making a repository, because I do like LinkedIn, but it's a little bit hard to navigate like older content. Mm-hmm. So like the videos that I made 2 months ago have like disappeared into the LinkedIn waste bin. But yeah, I think it takes a while. And to that point, like if you're going to just hop on and like verbal vomit, like I don't think there's that much value in it. And I think if you're trying to put out something that's really valuable, like I don't want to use the word curated, but like something that's really condensed, like that's probably not something that takes 2 minutes to come up with. So.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. YouTube's, I think, a pretty fascinating one as well. There's a lot of, I think, data content. I don't think there's a lot of good data content, though.
Yeah.
So I think it's still a great opportunity for you to branch out and get out of the LinkedIn walled garden. Now you can be in the YouTube walled garden instead, or both, I guess. That's what we do. We're in both. So seems to work out well. I think it's easier to build a following on LinkedIn, but YouTube has a lot more longevity. And it's also like the, second largest social network. So
yeah.
That's interesting. 1 second. I need to let my dog out.
Yeah, you're good.
That's like, yeah. So, and you're in Denver. Are you active in the Denver tech scene at all? What's that like?
No.
Sorry, hello?
The Denver tech scene. Sorry, computer lag, work from home errors. But yeah, the Denver tech scene, we definitely have a lot of startups how here, I mean, my first job here was for like an economics startup that this guy who was like a tech mogul started. So we definitely have like a tech first culture. Like if you go out to a bar here, half the people that are there are going to be coders. So it's definitely like people around, but I wouldn't necessarily say we have tech first, like everybody sitting around and coding all the time. If anything, people here are trying to get outside and go hiking more.
Interesting. Yeah, Denver's. Yeah, I'm in Salt Lake, so like we're on the other side of the mountains from you guys, but it seems like we're basically like kind of cousin cities in a lot of ways. Both mountainous, both have tech scenes. Both on the weekends, everyone wants to get outside, and that's I think awesome and also very crowded. So, yeah. Do you have any favorite places that you like to get out?
I love camping pretty much anywhere I can do it. My boyfriend and he has a truck, so we do like truck bed camping and kind of just drive wherever. We did a 14er last weekend, which was super fun.
Nice.
And then I actually, my hobby is salsa dancing, so I spend a lot of time at salsa clubs as well.
No way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny though. Most of the really good dancers that I know are actually coders because, you know, a lot of memorization moves. And I think that there's like a strong tie between like musicality and math. So most of my friends are like data engineers that just dance on the weekend.
Interesting. Like salsa dancing or other?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. It's a weird connection, but I mean, it seems like a lot of folks are doing it. So
that's crazy. I didn't know that was a thing. I guess I DJ a lot, so I don't know if that's
really?
similar-ish. Yeah. I normally film from my studio, but we're remodeling right now, so everything's in sort of disarray. But yeah, it's been doing that for 20 plus years now. So
wow, holy cow.
Yeah. But yeah, that's how I put myself through a school back in the day. So
that's so funny. Yeah, I paid with teaching dance lessons. So
oh really? Interesting.
Yeah, you gotta do it somehow.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting about the comment about techies and music. I think that's I notice this a bit. There's always there's some sort of interesting hobby that techies are into that seems both quirky and I think surprising. I think otherwise I think a lot like to brew beer as well and other things. So at least that's how it is in Salt Lake, which might be ironic because we have I think a reputation as a place where you wouldn't brew beer, but it happens. So that's interesting. And
I was gonna say I didn't really know how to drink.
No, there's only like 5 people here who brew beer, so that's interesting. I mean, kind of walk me back through, with data and whatnot. I mean, where do you want to take your content? I think over the next few years, it seems like you're starting to get, I think, a really good presence and a brand.
Yeah. So what's next? That's something I'm still trying to figure out, honestly. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, I think part of why I've gotten traction is that there's not a ton of content out there that's just like simple, accessible, like data for idiots type stuff. So I'm still trying to figure it out. I've been doing a little bit of adjunct teaching with the data science platform, just in terms.
Interesting.
Oh, cats are knocking stuff over. Sorry. Just in terms of, I teach like a think business first mindset class around how you can structure your data and your data architecture and like what tools, if any, you're going to pick for something like that. So I could see something like that taking off more long run. And then I think just continuing to make topics around like high level, what people have questions about, honestly. Like one of the main places that I get content from is other salespeople ask me, like, what's machine learning? Like, what is democratization? What does all this stuff actually mean? And challenging ourselves to kind of bridge that gap a little bit.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, walk me through that. I mean, there seems to be some topics that I know come to mind, like democratization of data is a pretty big one right now. I think a lot of people like to talk about it. Like, how would you describe that?
Yeah, I think data democratization is funny. I was actually doing some research on it last week for the video that I made. And I think it's kind of 2 parts. One piece of it is keeping your data in a centralized place where people can actually access it, and then empowering non-technical users to use that data as well. So for example, like If I own a grocery store or like, Emma's pet food store, this is the example I always use in my videos. As all my teams start collecting data, maybe sales kind of starts storing all their data in one place, marketing has their own data, and like ops has their own data. And it's not really an intentional choice to store that all in different places. But 10 years later, you have super siloed data that nobody can. Sorry about that. You have super siloed data that nobody can access. And, if I have 3 different numbers for what my ROI is, that's really problematic. So part of that is not necessarily like putting it all in one giant warehouse, but at least keeping it in a central location where people can get the data that they need. And you don't have to actually call up sales and ask them to send you all your data. And then I think the other piece of that is empowering non-technical users and people that aren't going to be like power users to access that data as well. So if that means like using dashboards or coming up with a couple KPIs that people can access, or maybe some sort of visualization or like a drag and drop tool for for building out models. I think there's a lot of different options, but it's figuring out a way to let people access the data they need and not necessarily giving them just like Excel sheets on Excel sheets on Excel sheets, because for most people, they're not going to really know what to do with that.
Yeah, this is a huge problem. It's been a pervasive one for quite a long time as well. Like, how much do you think this is organizational versus technology?
I think, honestly, I would say like probably north of 60% of all the issues I see just across IT that I've worked with are just because of organizational differences, if you want to call it that.
Interesting.
And I don't think it's necessarily about having like platforms like Snowflake can enable you to have better democratization in XYZ. I have to do my sales pitch. But more than that is like, you can get like a data robot type platform or Data IQ or Snowflake, and you can get all these like really sexy IT programs. But if you don't have a data first culture and you don't have a company mindset that's about like, centrally storing your data or everybody understanding what metrics are so they're inputting data in the right way, like it's like having a Ferrari and driving it with the emergency brake on. Like there are people that use AWS and Google and Snowflake and still store 40 copies of their data. Like we can't fix that for you. If that's your data architecture, like that's kind of something that you need to go back to the drawing board and figure out. So
yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, how would you I guess go about creating a data first culture if you had the opportunity?
Oh, that's a good question. I think first off, it's about sitting people down and going through the stuff that nobody wants to go through, like agreeing on KPIs, for example, or agreeing on processes. And I think it's about, first off, having somebody at the top that actually really is like, okay, this is the data governance guy, or like a CDO or whoever that's going to be, somebody at the top that's making the rules. But more importantly than that, it's about having every end user understand the importance of inputting the right data and following the same rules, right? Because like if you have 50 salespeople that are all inputting different stuff into Salesforce, like good luck figuring out what your pipeline looks like. If every single store you have is inputting different variables in different ways, like you can't run analytics on that. Like no number of machine learning models will save you from bad data. So I think it's about going back to the very basics of like, okay, do all of my store owners understand all these different metrics that we've defined? And it's hard because like, that's not the cool part of data, right? When we went into data science, it's not because we wanted to spend all day doing data collection and data cleaning. It's because we wanted to like build out awesome models, but like steaming pile of garbage in, steaming pile of garbage out. So
it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll talk about that in a bit too, I think, because it seems to me like data is also changing, I think, because of tools like Snowflake and a lot of the kind of the modern data stack, so to speak. I hate that term now. It's so cliched, but it seems like a lot of things are becoming easier to do. And so the attention is, I think, is going to be more upstream in terms of the higher value add stuff like data quality, data cleaning, all the things that were sort of, I guess, the non-cool stuff to do. But now it's becoming easier to do it, and all the low-level plumbing's been taken care of. So now you can finally start doing that. But I suppose, what's your opinion on that statement, as well as, I guess, the willingness of companies and data scientists to want to go that route versus just doing the cool stuff like model building and all the the non-janitorial work, so to speak.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this is actually, at Snowflake, I teach a class around, big data technology and what's out there. And one of the things we talk about is the 80-20 rule, about how data engineers and data scientists are probably going to spend 80% of their time doing data cleaning and making sure that your tables are the right flavor. And then 20% actually running all the models and the cool stuff that's like, computer vision, machine learning, like insert hot topic here. But that's a really big weight on the industry, I think. And additionally, I think one of the big issues we have is that we're not necessarily teaching people to become data engineers or warehouse engineers, or like when people first go into IT, they do it because they see that Forbes article about the data scientist being the sexy job of 2021.
Yep.
They don't realize that, like, if I have a company that has 100 IT people for my data team, like this many are going to be doing like data engineering, data warehouse maintenance, pipeline building, XYZ. And then like I have like 2 PhD data scientists, right? So I think one of the big issues we have is that we're pumping out a ton of people that can do that last mile, and not enough folks that understand that, like, yeah, it's cool. And if you don't have everything else set up, like, good luck.
I mean, it's an interesting thing. I mean, when you did your master's in analytics, for example, I mean, what were the expectations of the curriculum? What was the curriculum you took? And I guess the expectations of you and the other students going through the program, and what you think you'd be doing when you got out versus, I guess, what you're doing now.
Yeah, we all thought we were going to be data scientists. Like the first quarter, we were all like, I'm going to work for Google and I'm going to make machines that can drive cars and I'm going to do all sorts of life-changing analytics stuff. And like, none of us do that. Like we're project managers, some of us. I think I'm the only person that went into sales. We have a lot of people that are like data engineers or software engineers. 1 or 2 people that run like AI or data insights. But again, a lot of running AI and data is making sure that you have all the right info coming in. So I think we went into it kind of with the intention of learning about data science. The program was like business analytics and big data.
Interesting.
And it ended up being a lot of learning how the sausage gets made. So like they made us learn how to use Hadoop and coding MongoDB and like build out pipelines in Pentaho and like really, really hands-on, which like it sucked and I'm not good at it, to be honest with you. But I think it was good to learn that that's what people are dealing with right now. And I mean, so my program was in Spain, and I apologize to Spanish viewers, but I think that the US is probably 10 years ahead of most other countries in terms of tech. And there, at least, you still have a ton of companies that are running on like Hadoop and Spark and like kind of the old school big data platforms.
Right.
And like you kind of got to know what that is if you're going to play in this world. So I think it was like a necessary evil, but I definitely think it was like a come to Jesus moment when we all realized that we weren't just going to be like, like staying up late at night writing code that's like, quick, we have to lock all the gates. Like we have to identify all the thieves, like what you see in the movies when people do data science. That's really not what was going to happen. So
it's very underwhelming, I think. So most of the time, I think it's spent like finding, semicolons that are misplaced or, badly formatted strings, that kind of stuff. So it's pretty hilarious. Yeah, I mean, when I adjunct as well over at the University of Utah, and I teach in the analytics MSIS and MSBA program there. So it's interesting. I mean, I enjoy teaching there. I think it's also interesting. I think getting the perspective of students, what they think they'll be doing versus I think what I think they think we'll be doing when they're out. So it's I think there's a lot of demand though for data engineers right now, and I think that's pretty awesome. It seems like it's finally catching up with where reality is, which is just a lot of the work that needs to be done is inherently kind of the foundational work, not necessarily the, like as you pointed out, the intense scenes in the movies where you're, sleuthing and all that stuff. People do that, of course. I just don't think it's as plentiful as is advertised. So.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I think like, especially in university programs, I think we do kind of a disservice to people. Like I got into data because I took one econometrics class and I wrote a logistic regression and I was like, machine learning. Not really, but like they gave us like these beautiful clean data sets and we're like, here you go, like make a model. And we were like, this is awesome. This is so easy. Data's the future. And in my master's, like they would just throw data sets that like actual companies had collected at us where like there's random variables that God knows how they got there and nobody really knows what they mean. And they kind of just like giant question marks. And we had to learn how to figure out what everything is and going back to business users and asking them why they collected the data that they did. And it's sleuthing, but in like a different way. And like one of the things that I talk a lot about at Snowflake is that like we had this one project in my master's where we had to make some predictions on grocery store demand. And I think we spent like 3 months trying to get the tables in the right formats and clean data and, feature engineer. And then I think we probably spent like maybe 2 or 3 days running models.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things that you just don't really realize that that's as big of a pain as it is until you have to do it yourself.
How long do you think it would take you when you first started the project?
Oh, we thought that we were going to be like just running lots of awesome code. And then we actually, it felt like in the movie The Big Short where the guy actually starts pulling up the tables and looking at all the data and you're like, oh, okay, like that's not going to work. Like this data doesn't make any sense. We got to go back to the drawing board, figure out what's even here. So it was definitely eye-opening because I don't think any of us knew that was even a pain that people experienced.
Interesting. I mean, how much of this informs that when you're out doing sales then? I mean, it seems like you can empathize a lot more with data teams, for example, and the types of work they're doing. I mean, how often do you find yourself in dialogues with clients or prospects and trying to maybe even help coach them with what they're going through with data?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say probably most, if not all of the companies that I work with at some point having some sort of issues, right? Like, and, customers tell me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think I've ever really worked with a company where they're just like, everything is perfect. We get everything all the time, super fast, really easy. Like all the data is getting imported into the right places and we know all the variables and then the Tableau dashboards are beautiful and we make business decisions. Because, like every business has different needs. And that's part of the issue here is like, you really can't do cookie cutter data architecture because, like every company has different data and bringing different stuff and they need different answers. And, like for the same reason that every company has unique offerings, every company also has unique data. So I think I'm rambling here, but it's absolutely something that I've seen a lot of, that I think all of us struggle with it to an extent.
Yeah, I can agree with that. So I think that it's an education process. I think it's also like an empathy process as well with clients, because I mean they're calling you for a reason, right? I mean, it's just call like Snowflake just for the fun of it. Maybe they do, but probably not. So they don't call companies like mine just to kind of just talk, right? I mean, you have a problem and you want some answers, but at the same time, I think it's, as a data person, it's kind of understanding like where's the, we kind of talked about organizations before too, but like where's it? Is this an organization issue or is this a technology issue? And if it's an organization issue, I suppose, like how do you help them win without getting involved too much? It's always a fine balance. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that's hard too, and I don't know if you've seen this as well, is companies will invest in whatever solution they think is going to be the best IT solution. And then when it doesn't work out for them, they don't see it as a sunk cost. And they're like, oh, well, we've already spent so much money investing in blah, blah, blah platform. And like, now we possibly switch because we're locked in here. And it's like, okay, but like, what are your actual business goals? Like, is anybody getting data? Can anybody out of IT use any of this information to drive decisions? Like, has this just turned into like some sort of IT monster that you just have to keep feeding? Or is this actually producing some kind of value? And I think so many companies make I mean, tell me if you've seen the same thing, initially go into IT because they're like, data's the future, data's the next oil, like we got to do it. And then they spend so much time just on maintaining the beast that they've created that it doesn't actually really net that many results.
Yeah, there's a certain level of complacency, I think, after a bit where I think that there's, as you point out, sunk cost, right? It's like, well, we've already made the investment.
Yeah.
So let's just tolerate what we have. And I think that's almost the worst spot to be in because you're not fully leveraging what you've committed to.
Yeah.
But you're not also like seeking an alternative. So you're just sort of in this weird limbo space where you're dealing with like a substandard process, probably technology as well, and a substandard data culture that's not fully utilizing and fully leveraging, its potential. And that's a shame, but I think it happens a lot actually, because that's just, I think kind of the organizational equilibrium after a bit. So it's just the reality of it. So, and it makes sales tough, I suppose, right? Because then it's like, well, like how much can I actually help you at the end of the day? I mean, it's nice. I mean, you get a contract signed and stuff, but when I help companies with data stuff, we used to help people with kind of the people, process, and technology part. And I was just like, I got rid of the people part. I just don't want to deal with it anymore. Just because I don't work there, right? I'm not an employee. I don't know the organizational dynamics or the history. So for me to come in and make recommendations on the people part of the the people, process, technology trifecta is just, I think, a bit disingenuous. So.
No, absolutely. And like, I think like there's a lot of quotes around, you can change the rules and you can change how people are supposed to be doing stuff, but actually changing company culture, like that's really hard to do. That's really hard to do. And if people are down with like importing the right data, which is like not a cool and fun thing to do, it's going to be really hard to make that change. So.
Kind of switching gears a bit. I mean, kind of non-tech stuff. I mean, you mentioned your salsa dancing. I also noticed that you did a Knowles wilderness EMT course, which I thought was pretty cool. So I have a connection to Knowles. It was actually my first job when I was a kid. So lander, but yeah, walk me through that. I mean, it seems like you got varied interests, which I think is really cool. So.
No, I do. I have ADD, and I think that's pretty clear. I get bored very easily, and so I like to do a lot of things. For me, variety is the spice of life. I think it's a stupid quote, but it's true. So yeah, when I was in high school, I was good at math, and so everyone was like, "You have to be a doctor. You have to do medicine. Like that's the only career option other than being a lawyer." Because like in high school, you either become a doctor or a lawyer, or you go work at Burger King. And so I was like, oh, well, I should see if this whole doctor thing is all it's cracked up to be. And I did a wilderness medicine course with Woofer, and, I can relocate shoulders and split a leg and like build a tourniquet if I need to, which I thought was super cool. So then I went on to get my EMT, like the people that drive ambulances. And that was not as cool. Not as cool. It was more just keeping people alive until you dump them into the ER. Which, wasn't very interesting to me. And it turned out that the more I saw blood, the less I liked it. So long run, it didn't really work out, but it's good to know every time I go on a hike, if somebody gets hurt, I can.
Yeah, it's good to know. I guess if we ever go hiking, I know I'm in good hands. That's it. Did you ever work as an EMT?
I worked briefly in patient transport.
Okay.
Which is like driving people in wheelchairs around in like those like super cool minivans.
Oh.
That was one of my first jobs in high school.
No way. In high school. Interesting. Yeah. That's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, it was too much. They shouldn't have given me that job. It was interesting, but I think for me, I like to do more problem solving. Like I like a job where I can interact with a lot of people and I can help people understand things. And the hard thing with emergency medicine is like every single day you're dealing with people on the worst day of their life. And that's just like hard. And I respect people that can do it, but like I would rather sell every single day than have to work in an ER. So
it seems stressful. I live kind of by a hospital on a busy road, so it's several times a day. There's always an ambulance driving down. I'm just like, that person, whoever's in there, is having obviously the worst day of their life, as you said. It's just I don't know, but power to people I think who are EMTs and want to do that. That's awesome. I wasn't sure if you went salsa dancing and then worked as an EMT like right after just on the weekends because
I did actually. Yeah, I used to go to like my IB class and learn how to place IBs, and it happened to be right across the street from the salsa club. So like change into my heels and walk on over. So
that's pretty dang hilarious, actually.
So. Yeah, it was funny. It was. I don't know, I like, and I think that's part of why I like sales is that it's just like every day is something new and it really keeps you on your toes. And it's very dynamic. And for the same reason that I like dancing a lot is like, it's kind of hard to go on autopilot and do that, which I think, at least for me, I like to have something that kind of forces me to stay engaged. Well,
yeah, if you're in sales and you're not doing it a lot, I would say on autopilot's not really like a good idea for sales. Unless you're like an e-commerce company or something, I guess, and you just have orders coming to you. But yeah, if you're doing like B2B, especially, it's you got to be out there. I mean, walk me through that real quick. I mean, do you have like a strategy or like how do you go about like prospecting? If you can talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, every salesperson has got a different opinion on this. And, I know some people that are real meta about it that are like, I'm here to make a human to human connection and like see into their soul. And for them, it works. I'm like, cool.
Crazy. All right.
Like there's a billion different sales books out there and they all say something different because like, if there was a silver bullet for this job, like none of us would be here, and something works for every person. But kind of like I alluded to earlier, I'm all about social selling. And for me, I think like if you're not ready to make that purchase, there's nothing in the world I'm going to do. If you don't have the right company culture, or you don't have the budget, like I can give you all the information you need, but like, I can't force you to buy something you don't want to buy.
Right.
And there's a book I really like that one of my mentors gave to me that's called Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. And it's about being a more candid salesperson and asking them like, okay, sounds like you guys aren't ready to purchase right now. Like that's totally good. Let's set up a time in 6 months where we can actually walk through this and when it might be a better time. Because, for the used car salesman mentality, I think if you're hitting a lot of those red lights and you're getting a lot of resistance, like at some point they're going to say no, whether it's right now or whether it's 6 months down the road or whether they buy a solution that doesn't end up working for them. But that's something you really have to listen to. And for me, I think it's about letting people know about what we do and then trying to figure out if it's the right fix for them. Because, candidly, like not everybody needs to drive a Ferrari and not everybody's going to buy a Toyota, like different companies need different solutions. And I think it's more about just talking to enough people to find the people that it is the right fit than like locking in on whoever you have right in front of you and like trying to force something down their throats. So
yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, it's interesting. I think as a salesperson gets more desperate too, like the customer can like smell that on them too. It just doesn't really work well at all. So
yeah, that's not cute.
Yeah. Do you have any other good sales books you'd recommend?
I think Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play is really good. I actually have another one right here that I like. This one is another one that one of my mentors recommended. It's called Discover Questions Get You Connected. And this one I really like. It gives you the structure for how to ask questions to understand somebody's pains. And I think like I would really highly recommend this one to people as well. Because, we talked earlier about salespeople that don't understand IT. And I know some folks that like aren't technical people. They're not technical sellers, but they know how to ask the right questions in order to figure out what they need to know. And that's the thing, like it's not about understanding how every single ETL pipeline is built out, but you do need to know how stuff is connected and what the actual impact of that is, right? And that's like, I don't want to ask questions to figure out like what your different connectors look like and what kind of models you're building in which language. And if you're doing like a neural network or what, like that doesn't really do anything for me. What I need to figure out is like, are you actually getting the answers you need? Like if you built out your whole IT system so that like you could optimize your marketing, for example, if you want to build out like a 360 on your customer analytics, like what's the actual revenue impact of that? Like how much are you actually losing from not being able to get all your stuff connected? I would, at least for me, I think is trying to focus on like the big picture business impact and how the IT makes that happen as opposed to like what every DBA company is doing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Have you ever watched Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah, great movie.
I often wonder, like, if Jordan Belfort was a software salesperson, like how well he would do.
I don't know. I think like you miss every shot you don't take. Like the people that are the best salespeople are the ones that make the most calls and send the most emails and reach out to the most people, because kind of like I said earlier, you miss every shot that you don't take. So some of it is about being personable, understanding the IT, and some of it is just a numbers game.
Yep.
Right? I mean, it's kind of like dating, right? Like if I never download a single dating app, I'm not going to go on any dates. And if I'm on there for a couple hours a day, like I'm going to find a lot of people that aren't a good fit for me. But the more I'm on there, the more right people I'm going to find.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like the guy from Wolf of Wall Street, if you can rip out a couple hundred calls a day, you're going to do better at this job than somebody who's not going to do that. So,
yeah. That's interesting. I read his book. What was it? The Way of the Wolf. It was a sales book that he wrote. It's actually really good. But it was interesting. He came across what he calls straight line selling. So it's like, if you can line up people believing in what was the order of operations, it was like your company, your product, then you, or something like that. Then like, you have established a degree of trust that makes it a lot easier to sell. If those are misaligned, then obviously probably not a good deal. But he talked about how he basically got, like in the movie, how he had like all these just submoronic rejects, taking them, crafting them into salespeople, and then they're off to the races selling. I mean, so he's like, anyone can do this. You just need to, just follow my program. So I thought that was interesting. And I always wonder, it's always a fun thought experiment. Like, what would happen if somebody like him or like a Zig Ziglar, for example, like gets into becomes a snowflake salesperson, and then they. I always just wonder, like, how would they do? It's so crazy. So, because these are like widely respected sales trainers. I think Jordan Belfort's problem was he was too good at his job.
A little bit. Yeah, no, and that's the thing. I think like one thing that's a little bit hard about sales is that like you get out the amount that you put in. Like if you put in 80 hours a week, like we're paid on commission, like you're probably going to make more money. So it kind of incentivizes, like the Wolf of Wall Street types of the world that are like ultra intense because there's a direct incentive to do better. And like, to your point, like, I think it's a skill that I would say it's a skill that anybody can learn. I've seen some people struggle. Like it's not for everybody. Yeah. And like, candidly, like if like, I was in theater as a kid. So like, I'm kind of okay with just putting myself out there and acting like a fool when it happens. If you have a hard time with that, like, maybe it's not the best fit. So
yeah, it's not the right job for everybody. Plus you're going to face a lot of rejection too. I think that's one thing people just are horrified about is like just people saying no to them. So
like the first 3 months of a sales job is like brutal because it's just like rejection after rejection after rejection. But me and my friends joke now, like if any of our boyfriends tried to break up with us, they wouldn't have any luck because we're so used to having people say no and then just swerving around it,
You bust out your book of questions. It's like, well, walk me through this. Why would you want to break up?
Is that what you're really asking, or is there something else that you're not saying?
Just defer the conversation for 6 months until you're ready.
Exactly. Let's wrap back around to this in 2 weeks.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you have a really interesting combination of skills. Like I said, it's fascinating, I think, to see somebody, I think, who's really good at the data stuff, good at explaining it, and sells. Like that's just, like I said, that piqued my interest quite a bit. So for people who want to know more about you, how would they find out?
Yeah, so I have a lot of content out on my LinkedIn. I think that's public. So send me a request on LinkedIn. My name's Emma Dahl. I recently put out a YouTube channel that I'm just publishing my stuff from LinkedIn on, and just reach out directly. I mean, I'm always happy to chat with people. So shoot me, slide into my DM. I'm there.
Yeah, awesome. And then, we'll put the YouTube channel in the show notes as well to get some boost on that. And I'll subscribe immediately after, so you get followers.
Yes,
so
subscribe and like it.
Awesome. That's been a fun chat. So good luck with your content.
Yeah, thank you.
Like I said, a big fan of it. So yeah, we'll talk soon. So thanks.